I was so excited because after I got into the MTC, the 6 weeks went by like in a flash. I was just like, oh, I'm done. Wait, where am I going? I'm going to Chile now? Oh my gosh, okay. So I remember packing my bags in the MTC and heading off to Chile. And it was so cool because my mission president was there at the gate. And this is one of my fondest moments of the mission, is going to the gate after the airplane had landed and seeing them and then being embraced in their arms and shaking Presidente Obeso's hand. But Hermano Obeso pulled me aside and said that she remembered me and that she was waiting for this moment to come. And I thought, this is so cool because here they are. I think it was about 4 months later, and she still was waiting for me to come and to serve the Lord. And so that was a really cool experience. It was just so sweet because they were just like such happy people. And I remember when I got to Chile, we went to a meeting to be, get situated and whatnot, and then we got to meet our trainers. That was a fun one. So I remember all my group, they, get their trainers. So my whole group was basically sitting, like, if you're in, like, I don't know where you guys are going to be doing. Actually, I do know where you guys are going to be doing it most likely because I was served in the same mission. But you're in this chapel, and so you're basically sitting on, like, the pews, and then all the trainers are up top on, nope, we got to switch it. So the trainers are sitting on the bottom on the pews, and the new missionaries are sitting up top. I think trainers were definitely sitting in the pews, and the new missionaries were sitting on, like, the podium, the stand area, and so they would be taught, or we would have, like, a little meeting, and then finally we got to meet our trainers. And I was just, like, looking at them like, okay, who is going to be my trainer? I was very nervous because I was like, what if they are a native and they only speak Spanish? What if I just don't understand them? Hello? That's a very valid point. And so I remember all my missionary friends in the group, they were just getting their trainers one by one, and then finally, Presidente Obeso called my name, and I was like, oh, that was the moment. And my trainer was Hermana Tinini, and she was from Bolivia. So that was a really fun experience because I was like, yeah, she doesn't speak English. This is going to be great. But it was an amazing experience because I was able to see my companion for the very first time, and automatically I knew this was it. And then when he told me where I'd be serving in an island called Chiloé. And if you get to serve there, I served in Ancud. And you would love that. That is a very beautiful island, and it was wonderful because my home was from an island, and so I was just like, one island to the next. This is great. And going to Chiloé with her, we had to go through bus or go by a bus. We had to travel by bus and then take a little ferry to the island. And so that was really cool because during those 4 to 6 hours of just traveling, we got to get to know each other a little bit. She got to talk to me how the mission was and how to see where my Spanish level was. And so, we were able to carry on a conversation because I knew Spanish from before the mission. But even, for example, if you don't know Spanish before the mission, you will be able to communicate with your trainer if, for example, you get a Latin companion, because the Spirit will be there and they will be guiding you to know what they're saying so you can figure out what to say back. And it's a great and wonderful thing. But I remember my first day with my trainer. We got to the house, put everything down, did not unpack. We went straight to an appointment. And I was just like, sweet, what's going on? I don't know what I'm doing. But we walked to our area and we walked to the house and we knocked on the door. Actually, in Chile you don't knock. You get there's these fences, and then you I don't know, you get a pen or a pencil and go through the little gates, and then you say, "Allo," And so that's how they open up the doors. And so we did that. And I was just like, whoa, that's different. You have to go, hello. And instead of like knocking, which was, it was different, but it was really cool. And so finally we go into this house, and my companion, apparently she was telling me what we would be teaching. So we were just going to do something simple, a Book of Mormon story and like a principle to really get like the first basis of the missionary feel. And it was actually really cool because halfway during the lesson, I remember her just like sitting there, stopping, and then all of a sudden she'd look at me like, your turn to speak. And I'm just like, my turn to speak. What was just said? Because I did not understand anything. For the most part, because in Chile, their accents were crazy. They were different. And like studying Spanish all throughout middle school and high school, I was just like, okay, you know, I feel okay with a conversation. But going to Chile, I was like, what is this language? I did not study this. But it was so cool because even though you're sitting there in this lesson as a newbie and you're just like, I'm just going to go off with what the Spirit says in my head. And so I honestly just picked a scripture, read it, and tried to explain the gist of it. I mean, it was really fun because my companion was very helpful. She's like, I will go with the flow with what you just said. And we talked about it. And I just smiled and sat there, nodded my head, and said yes. And I knew how to bear my testimony. So when I knew it was testimony time, when she sat there and looked at me again, saying, okay, here's your cue. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to bear my testimony because that's how it is. And so I did that. That was like my first lesson in the mission field. And it was wonderful because also it was really helpful since we were teaching a new convert at the time. And they were very understanding that I just got there and that I was trying my best to communicate with them. Because if they can feel that you're trying to communicate with them, they will show and reciprocate that love to you, saying, yeah, you're trying, so I'm going to try. And then after a while, it just clicks, and you will have all these amazing experiences from the get-go, from day one, from day one, all the way to the very end, even up to now, if you stay in contact with the people that you taught in the mission. Yeah, that was really cool. So yeah, that was like my first day in the mission field. It was wonderful. Okay, so I served in, when did I go? I left for the MTC July 31st. Did I say 31 days? Yeah, nice. So I left for the MTC July 2014, and I got back at the very end of January of 2016. Yeah, that's the time that I spent in Chile, and it was really cool because while I was there, I got to serve in 5 different areas. I got to serve my first area in Ancud in Chiloé, and the second area was in Radiamadi, La Unión. The third one was Puerto Varas. The fourth one was Los Lagos, and the fifth one was Villarrica. And each and every one of those places was very dear to me. They are amazing places, so if you ever get to serve in those areas, you're going to love it. So with this mission, there's a variety. There's wards, there's stakes, obviously with the wards. There's districts in the sense where there's branches. I served a lot in branches. I think I only served in 1 ward. Yep, I served in 1 ward throughout my whole mission, and that was in Puerto Varas. And each area has its own beauty. Southern Chile is very green, and because it rains a lot, so make sure you bring a raincoat. Yes. But it's nice and green, and it's beautiful. It's the missionary work. Some people say it's very difficult, but if you go there preparing your heart to serve the people, if you prepare in the way of understanding that each person is a person. They're not a number, but they're a child of God. You'll be able to see all the different things you can do to bless the lives of others. You'll be able to see the Lord's hand in the work. And it's amazing because each person is different. Each person has their own story. But if you can find the people because of the faith that you have to help them by sharing this restored message of the gospel to them, you will be able to see the working hands of God in their lives. But not only in theirs, but yours as well. And not only will you be converted, they'll be converted through your actions of love and helping them. When I was on my mission, I had my own, so we have like a mission theme, and so you follow the theme. But also, I decided to have my own theme. I decided that at the very beginning of my mission because I wanted to make it obviously personal. And in my theme was basically from the scripture of Doctrine and Covenants 18:10. It was, remember the worth of souls is great in the sight of God. And so as I was studying that, I felt very prompted, like a very strong feeling saying, yeah, that needs to be my personal theme of the mission, to help others feel that they have this worth, that they are important to Heavenly Father. And I know that helped me a lot as I went through day by day in the streets when it was cold, rainy, and sometimes people wouldn't want to talk to us. But there would always be at least that one person at the end of the day saying that you knew that you helped because you helped them try to understand that they had a worth. Because going through the mission, I remember talking about that a lot with people. And because a lot of people down there were wondering about that. And it was so cool to see that if you can help them find their worth and invite them to Christ and fulfill your purpose as a missionary, you'll be able to see the light in their eyes like change and glow to something brighter. And that was one of my favorite parts as a missionary, to help people see their potential, and which helped me help them come unto Christ. And that was really cool. I loved it. Southern Chile. It gets cold. If you like the cold, hopefully you like wet cold, because about 9 to maybe 10 months of the year, it's always rainy, like usually a constant rain. When I got there, they gave us rain skirts. I'm not for sister missionaries. For elders, I think they gave them rain pants. I don't know if that's a thing, but I'm going to pretend that it is, because I think that's what they gave them. But they basically give you the rain jackets, raincoats, but always bring an extra pair, because trust me, if it says it's waterproof, in Chile, nothing is waterproof, or at least in the South. That's what I was always telling my companions and other people, because they'd be like, oh yeah, so the waterproof stuff works. I'm like, maybe for about a week. But as long as you wrap things, like for example, your scriptures, if you have your backpack or like a side bag, if you get like, for what I did, I got like a waterproof bag before leaving, and then also a Ziploc bag, and that's what I put my scriptures in, and they stayed perfectly fine. So if you're worried about that with the rain, just make sure you have a waterproof bag for the scriptures and then Ziploc bag, and it'll help a lot. But yeah, otherwise it does rain about 9 to 10 months of the year, and it's cold rain. But as long as you're like supplied well, it's worth it. And the summers, it gets hot. Depending on where you're at, it does get really hot. But then again, that's like 2 to sometimes 3 months of the year, so it's not too bad. But I would definitely prepare for that in the sense of packing. One other fun thing that you will love in the south of Chile is the fleas. Yeah, fleas. Luckily, I didn't have that much of a problem with them, but a lot of my companions did. Like, they would have their ankles, like, bitten up pretty badly. So make sure, if you do not want to get flea bites as often, bring flea powder or bring one of those, like, flea collars. Some of my companions had them, and they work pretty well. You just put them under your bed, like, on the floor. And so that helps. Because there's a lot of stray dogs, so obviously the fleas just magically appear. Yeah. So that was fun. In most of the areas in southern Chile, so you can either be in like El Campo, which is like the countryside, or you can be in the city. And you're always traveling by bus. Like there's micros, which is like a tiny bus and then there's also bigger buses. So you can use that basically as your transportation. If you go to Coyhaique or Punta Arenas, you basically fly through like an airplane kind of thing. And so that's really fun. The food there, I love it. I love it. Just be careful, because as missionaries, they feed you a lot. They feed you a ton. But the funny thing is that their bread, so good. Bread with every meal. But at the same time, they have a salad with every meal. However, their salads are a little different. The best one, I think, is the ensalada chilena, which is basically tomatoes, onions, cilantro, and oil, lemon juice, and salt. So good. I don't know how they make, well, okay, I know how they make it, but how they make it there, so good. So good. The fresh fruit and vegetables there are amazing. For example, one time, not one time, a lot of the time, every day, because there's always like fruterias on like the streets, because that's like the local businesses that people normally go to or own. And I'm telling you, like some of the stuff would be like as big as your face, and you're just like, wow, that's huge. But the food is great. The bread, amazing. My favorite, okay, I love their torta de milhoja, which is amazing. I can't even describe how amazing it is. You're just going to have to try it down there, and it's amazing. Then, like, for example, if you're just on the street and you don't have time to go actually grab food, you normally just walk into, like, they're called negocios. And so you go into the little negocio, which is like a tiny little market. It's not even a market. It's like a tiny little store. And you get these cookies. These cookies are called frack. They're so good. So write that down before you go into the NPC in like your journal, front page, first page, on the side little corner, write down frack and bonobons. And your life will be changed forever. They're just so good. Let's see. Traditions. September 18th is their Independence Day. They go all out. There are empanadas. They make so many empanadas that day, and it's so good. And you'll have mamitas there, so have your mamitas teach you how to make empanadas. Either it's a P-Day, depending on the rule for this Independence Day, depending on like what your mission president says. Learn how to make empanadas, because trust me, when you come back to the States, you'll be wanting an empanada. But they're delicious, and they also have completos. It's like a hot dog with avocado on it and mayonnaise. They love their mayonnaise a lot. Yeah, but it's really good. And they have tomatoes. That's like their staple for everything. Tomatoes they're always there. I didn't like tomatoes at the very beginning of my mission, but now I love them. So there you go. If you don't like tomatoes, you can be like me and learn to love them. Okay. One thing I do love about the culture is that they're very loving. They will hug you. As a sister missionary, you're allowed to do the little kisses, the besos on the cheeks. Obviously for the men, you shake their hands, and that's one part that I loved about their culture, is that they're all so very friendly. Like, that's one way how you greet people, and honestly, I still do that with some of my friends are like the Hispanics that I know here, I will go and give them a hug and then do little kiss things because I just love it. That totally influenced me there. It's amazing. If you're not a hugger in that sense, sisters, you better get used to it because that's definitely part of their thing. Because if you don't do that, because that's their welcome, that if you don't really do that to them, they kind of get offended. So, yeah, always just say hi to everyone because why not? You're a missionary. That's always going to be a fun part because obviously, you know, you're new to, you're in a foreign country. Hello, you got to learn a language. And so don't stress about it. Honestly, just work diligently. Read the scriptures in Spanish. That, I think, is key to learning the language. Something that I remember doing is in my training, I set a goal to actually read the Book of Mormon in English first, but then at the same time, start reading it with the Spanish scriptures. And then after I've read, because I don't know, you can easily read that pretty quickly in English. And then after I read it once in English, again, I set that aside. I did not touch my mission, like my English scriptures for the whole mission. I just strictly used my Spanish scriptures. Mainly because that helped me, because that made me be like, I mean, obviously, if I didn't understand like a word or two, I would use my English scriptures. But otherwise, read your Spanish scriptures because it will help a lot with learning vocabulary words, learning how to speak in the sense of, what is it called, gospel context. Also, since you're in a foreign country, take this as an advantage to learn outside of the gospel vocabulary. Learn common, everyday use vocabulary because it will help you in the long run, especially after the mission, because you want to keep up the language because it becomes very dear to your heart, and you will absolutely just hopefully love the culture and the language and the people, and you'll want to keep it up so you can be able to talk to them. And during the mission, at the very beginning, it can be kind of hard and stressful, but I'm more of a chill person and just do what you have to do. You know you, so study how you need to study. It will honestly click in by the end of your training, I think for sure. And then you'll get more confident as time goes on. But I would say maybe 3 to 6 months, even less than 6 months, and you'll be very comfortable with the language. But just have faith, and the Lord will help you. All the time. He always helps you. Also, just when you speak Spanish, you know how English people, we just like talk with our, like, we don't really move our mouths. In Spanish, you have to use your mouth. You have to be like, always, because it's a very pretty, and you use all the sound that you can get in the language. So it might sound weird, but just move it, because then you'll be able to get the pronunciation better. When I was learning the language, like obviously the Spanish that you learn in school is wonderful. It helps a ton because you have like a basis. But then once you actually get there, use the time wisely to actually, like if you have a Latin companion, obviously you're going to have to speak Spanish to them. So practice your pronunciation. Don't get offended when people say, hey, your pronunciation sucks. They told me that all the time. And I was like, sweet, I mean, I'm trying, man. I don't really, speak Spanish as my first language. Shocker, right? But definitely practice. Just don't give up. Because one day it'll click, and then you'll just be talking like a Chileno, which is awesome. Just saying. When you get that compliment from them, like, wow, you speak like a Chilean. It's just like, what the? Thank you. And then that's when you can start saying, well, I am Chilean. Yeah, that's one of the things I'd always do. I'd always walk around and be like, hey, when people say, hey, where are you from? I'd be like, oh, I'm from Chile. And they're like, really? You have blonde hair and blue eyes. Are you from the north? It's like, yes, I'm from Antofagasta. And they'll be like, no way, are you serious? You're from Antofagasta? And I'm like, no, I'm actually from like North America. the United States of America? And they're like, oh. Like, they look shocked. Like, so it's really fun because, like, after that, you're already having that basis, like, a basic conversation with them. And then you can start talking about other things, and then all of a sudden slip in, like, a little gospel thing in there. It's quite fun. After 18 months of just, like, you know, always talking to people, you get pretty clever of how you contact people. So, yeah. Yeah. Chile, I honestly would say, is pretty safe. Like, I never really felt scared there at all, and that's saying something from a girl's point of view, because you normally don't want to be walking out late at night alone, or in this case with a companion, but I never really felt scared. There's like a few times when I felt very uneasy, but it is a great place. You're gonna love it. It's so much fun. Let's see, stories. Okay, so the weather there can be kind of crazy. Oh, nope. Yes, I'm gonna go with this one. Okay, so the weather there can be kind of crazy, and obviously you know how Chile is just like that long, skinny country, and we're right on like the fault line. So obviously you can have some earthquakes down there. So I never been in an earthquake before, and I was in 2 earthquakes while I was there. It wasn't big ones like they were called. I want to say they were called like earth shakes. They were tiny. So, and these little earth shakes. So, the first one was actually my training, and we were doing 12 semanas, which is like 12 weeks, like the training program, and all of a sudden, the house started shaking. Or technically not the house yet, but like our room was shaking and we were shaking. We were just like going back and forth. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, what is this? What did I sign up for? And then like our closet's doors were just like going open and closed. And then all of a sudden the house started shaking. And so I lived in a house with 2 other sisters. And at this time, there was one from Brazil and the other one was from the United States. And then my trainer from Bolivia. And so we were all just like in our separate rooms because we were studying. And then all of a sudden, after this, I kind of like jumped up out of my seat like, oh my gosh, we're going to die kind of thing. Because I've never been in an earthquake, shake, whatever you want to call it. And then my companion was just looking at me like, what are you doing? Sit back down. And all of a sudden the other sisters called us, and they're like, I don't even know why they didn't just come to our door, but they called us, and they're like, hey, hermanas. And we're like, yeah? Did you feel that? It was like the most chillest conversation. And I was just like, don't we have to get out of the house? Because what if the house falls down? Because it was not a very sturdy house. Yeah, not at all. That's another story from the same house. Okay. It was not a very sturdy house. And so my commander was just like, no, we're good. The house hasn't fallen over yet, so we can still stay in here. And I was like, what kind of logic is that? If the house doesn't fall over, we can stay in the house? It was she was hilarious. So we decided not to leave the house with this shaking of the house from this earth shake. And all of a sudden I was thinking, oh wait, since we're right by the ocean, we should be worried about tsunamis as well, just in case. Because I've had experiences with that, and I tried trying to explain it to them, and they're just like, no, why do we need to worry about that? And I'm just sitting there like, oh my gosh, this might be the day I'm gone from Earth. I'm just like, well, at least I'm happy. But it was so fun, because afterwards, when I was able to, like a few weeks later, honestly, when I was able to explain myself a little bit better, I told my companion, she's like, oh yeah, that actually would have been smart if we left the house. And I was like, yes, it would have been smart. But we were safe. But so after my training, we our uncle got whitewashed, which is basically removing all the missionaries that are there and putting of your area and putting new missionaries in, so it's like a clean slate. So they took out the sisters and put 2 elders there, or maybe it was just, no, it was 2 elders. It was 2 elders there, and so they were in the same house. In our house, I got to hear this story later, and when I actually heard it, I laughed so hard I was crying, because I was like, well, good thing that did not happen to us. So, obviously, Chile is pretty developed as a country, but there's lots of areas where you can still see like the poverty, and it's very humbling to see that. And Ancud was definitely one of the places. And in our house, like in the middle of the house, it's just like dipped down. Honestly, I don't know how the house stood when the little earthshake happened, because even one of the sisters who was like sitting in the hole, she was like, yeah, I thought I was a goner for a moment, because I thought like the house would just open up and I'd just be like sucked in. But that didn't happen, which was good. But this story is with the elders, when the elders were living in the house. We were at a zone meeting, and they were just like, oh man, guys, we have the most craziest story to tell you guys. And we're like, what? And he's like, does anyone know where Ancud is? And it's like, oh yeah, I do. That was my first area. That's where I served, like my first area in the mission. And they're like, oh, you gotta hear this story. And I was like, oh no, what happened? And they said in the house, they would hear these little, that kind of noise, okay? And they're just like, what is it? And it would go on constantly, not only a day or a few minutes or a few hours, but a few weeks at a time. And then one day, I don't remember if it was in the beginning of the day or at night, but the little wood pecking like noise, that kind of noise, was really loud. And then all of a sudden, 2 of the elders just like screamed, and the other 2 elders like ran into their room and were like, oh my gosh, what happened? And apparently there were rats eating at the walls, and you just see all these rats coming out of the hole that they just ate, and all these elders just going like, oh my gosh, what do we do, just like freaking out. And when they explained that story, I was like, well, good thing that's an area for the elders now, because I'm pretty sure if we were in the house, I don't know what we would have done. But that was a very interesting experience to hear from them, because they were just like, yeah, we had to get like these logs. That's another thing. We had to get these logs from outside to really just start hitting the rats over the head with them so we won't get bitten and stay alive. And there was just like mad chaos, and I'm like, oh, that would have been very fun to watch, but at the same time, I was glad I did not live in that house anymore. That was a funny one. But don't worry, most of your housing is very safe, because the mission does check. After that, they had to move, obviously. Also, one of my other favorite things in the mission is, because of how cold it gets, you get to chop your own firewood. That might sound scary, but it is the funnest thing to do. I absolutely loved it, because when I first had to, because I got there at the in the middle of September, and it was cold. It was really cold. And I remember lying in my bed, just shivering, and with my blankets on top, and I was in my sleeping bag and just still really cold. And then even in bed, you can just see the air, just your breath. And I'm just like, oh, it's too cold to get up, but you have to get up. And so you get up, and then you do your exercises, but then you can make fire as well. And with making fire, the best warmth ever. It is always just so warm, and it just fills the soul like the gospel. It's just amazing, because then you're warm spiritually and then warm physically, and you're just like, oh, this is amazing kind of thing. But chopping the wood was the best. I remember one time with one of my good companions, oh man, she didn't know how to chop wood or make fire in that sense, because she was new, she just got there, and I was like, okay, this is the best time to learn. And so we went outside. And we got like our little wood blocks, and we put a piece of wood on top, and I showed her how to do it, and then I had her do it because she obviously had to learn. And so it was great, because she was there in her like position, ready with like the axe over her shoulder, in this like fun stance of like, okay, I think this is the right thing to do, but I'm just gonna go for it, and hopefully I don't cut off my leg, kind of thing. And so she goes, and as she like swings the axe to hit the wood, she goes, hi-ya! And then she like hits the wood, but the thing is, the axe does not penetrate the wood at all. It just like touches it, and then the whole log falls over. And then she like stumbles over because she's like, oh, that was harder than I thought. But it was just really funny because, I mean, where else can you, I mean, obviously there's other places where you can chop wood, but this is amazing because you get to chop wood for warmth. And it's so much fun. It is so much fun because then you get to make fire, and then after you're planning for the night and you have like a few more minutes of downtime before you actually have to go to bed, and you can like turn off the lights, open the windows, look at the stars, have your fire right there, and eat like a brownie out of a mug kind of thing if you're really craving a brownie. And honestly, that's like the best thing because it feels like you're camping. It's great. There's also, yeah, there's so, you will get so many great stories from your mission. It's going to be a wonderful experience. Oh, but also be careful with like, because I did say there was fleas, but also be careful for the spiders, because there are some very poisonous spiders on there that you don't want to get bitten by. One time my companion got bit by a spider, and it like totally laid eggs in her. Grossest pictures ever, but cool story. And I was like, so try not to get bit by a spider. Yeah, one time we were on exchanges, and during the night apparently I got bit by a spider on my arm, and I didn't realize that until we were on the bus like dropping off our companions so we can like switch back and get back to like normal. And all of a sudden I like look at my arm and I'm like, oh no, that's not good. Because you know, normally in the States, the spider bites, it's just like a tiny little red bump and you're just like, oh, okay, whatever. But this one, it like blistered over the bite, so it was like a huge blister. But then also I noticed that my arm was super swollen. And I'm just like, well, spiders are not my favorite things in the world anymore. And I was like slightly freaking out because my arm was just expanding. And I'm just like, oh no, what do I do? So we called the nurse, and I was with the companion, and she got bit by a spider like 4 or 5 times. And like when she called the nurse, she's like, oh yeah, so we have a spider bite to talk about. And she's like, oh no, like the nurse was going like, oh no, what did you do now? And she's like, actually, luckily it's not me, it's my companion this time. And I'm just like sitting there, just like, okay, yep, it's me. It's like, I don't know what's gonna happen to my arm, but it was so funny because like we had to go to the clinic because they don't really have like doctor's offices. They only have like clinics or the hospital. Hospitals are pretty sketchy. Stay away from them, in the sense of don't get sick to go there. But when we were at the clinic, I remember them just like looking at it. They poked it a few times and they're like, well, can you feel your arm? I'm like, yes. And they're like, can you? They just look like, well, hopefully this isn't anything too serious because there's a spider there that if it bites you, not to scare you, but you can die, kind of thing. And so they like decided to like, you know what, let's just pop the blister and call it good. And I'm just like, what about like the venom that's causing my arm to swell? They're just like, don't worry about it yet. You know, if it's still there in the next few hours, come back. And I'm just like, okay, well, this is great. So we told like the mission nurse all this stuff, and she's like, hermana, it's okay. I'm just like, thank you. And she's just like, that's the most weirdest bite that she can think of. Good thing it wasn't like the really poisonous kind, because she's just like, just try to get antibiotics. They gave you a prescription, right? And I was like, no, they didn't. And she was just like, oh, that's a little difficult. I'm just like, yeah. So, yeah. But sometimes those things happen and they're really fun. You just gotta go with the flow of it. Just have fun. And just enjoy yourself. Okay, so sister missionary advice. One thing for packing is, if you're thinking, oh, I just need like 2 skirts, 3 tops, you might want to do at least like 3 to 4 skirts and a few other tops. Like, make the skirts like plain, and then tops that you can easily change out with all the skirts, or at least the majority of them. Definitely you want rain boots, 100%. Rain boots are a must. Shoes. Okay, so a lot of sister missionaries that I do, they were very like, oh, I don't really want to get shoes, all like good quality shoes, because I don't know why. I mean, you're walking 24/7. So for example, the shoes that I got were like the Dance Go or something of the sort. I got them at like the Sister Missionary Mall in Orem, and they lasted the whole mission. Like, they were amazing. And I had no problems. Like, so if you don't want any feet problems, get good shoes. Just saying. Safety tips. Oh, honestly, the best safety tip that I have is listen to the Spirit. Be smart. Use your common sense. Because, for example, if I was ever in a situation with, like, a sticky situation with me and my companion, and we're like, how do we get out of this thing? 1, always listen to the Spirit. And also 2, if you have a companion that is from North America or speaks English, and you don't want, like, necessarily the other person to know what you are saying to your companion, speak English. Because that helped me a lot, in the sense of, hey, I don't want them to know that we're going to run and book it out of here in like 3 seconds. So, companion, how do you like that plan? So then they won't know. So it's great. Definitely had to use that maybe once or twice. But other than that, Chile is pretty safe. And as a missionary, you're always protected by Heavenly Father. He won't let anything harmful happen to you. As long as you listen to the Spirit. That is key as a missionary. Also, for example, this is like goes along with the safety tips, but like health-wise, if you don't want to gain weight, just be smart. The food is really good, but just be smart. I mean, you do your morning exercises, eat your fruit and vegetables. That's what I gotta say. But yeah. Christmas. It's so much fun. So I got 2 Christmases in Chile. So I mean, it's not like the States where they have like lights everywhere and it's just like, woo, oh my gosh, Christmas is coming. But it's more of the sense as a missionary, that's the time where you can help people realize the meaning of Christmas. That really, it's to remember Christ, and remember that he was of his birth, and to help people see that Christmas isn't about the gifts and whatnot, but it's about Christ and who he is and who he was for us. And I remember one of the Christmases that I was there, I think it was my first one, and it was really sweet because a member family invited us over for like the Christmas Eve dinner, and apparently it's like a tradition. I'm not sure if it was like just in their household or as in like part of their culture down there, but they would have this family at least had like this feast for dinner, and then they would all stay up late until midnight to open gifts, because that's just what they did. I mean, I was always thinking like, wait, what about Santa? They had different explanation about Santa and Christmas and all that fun jazz for like the kids. But it was really cool because you would see, like, my favorite part was just seeing all the families come together and seeing that it was a time where they could actually be together, because a lot of the time they were just working so hard all the time because it's difficult in other countries in like working situations and family life, because like they don't get enough money. And it was so sweet to just see like the simple things that they would appreciate it. But one of the questions is fun times. So we go into our mamita's house. This was, I think, my second Christmas there. And we see on this table this little burlap sack. And we're just like, oh, what's that? And my companion, she was just like patting it. Just like, wow, it's nice and warm. What is it? And she was like, patting it. And mamita, she comes in, he's like, hermana, ¿qué es? What are you doing? And she's like, I don't know, what is it? What am I not supposed to be doing? Like, she was confused. She's like, that's our dinner. And we're just like sitting there like, what? So, what it was, so they like lamb, this family, for dinner, and like they would have like a roast steak, and like they have that in the backyard, and so they would roast it up. And it was like a freshly killed lamb. It was really sad, but it was really funny because she was just patting it and she didn't know what it was, because like you could smell something was off. And then when she, like, mamita, she like completely flipped over like a little bit of it, like the burlap sack, and she's like, yeah, look, it's a dead lamb. And my companion was just like, huh, what was I just touching? And it was really funny. But it was also really cool because that's how you got to see, because I was more on the traditional aspect, I think, because my first Christmas there, they were a family from Colombia, so they had a different culture in how they celebrated. But my second Christmas there, I think that was more on the traditional sense, that it was like a lamb, and they would roast it, and it'd be a nice family gathering kind of thing, but still at the idea of waiting until midnight to open up like the gifts. And it was just really fun to see them come all together, and you can just feel that there's a different presence during the Christmas month. Like the month of December, it's completely different because people are more apt to remembering Christ, and so it's like a great time, because when I was on a mission for both of the two times of the month of December, we had like this what is it called, initiative, where the church would actually make videos of Christ to remember Christmas and to remember Him mostly. And it was really cool because that's like always a great way to contact people. It's like, hey, have you seen this video? Can we show it to you? Da 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 da. And you go about doing that, and it was so cool because then you can see so many different blessings in the sense of how you're reaching out to people to talk about Christ, and you can see how they're more receptive, and the light in their faces and their eyes just completely change, and yet they can sense that Christ really loves them and that He died for them. And so we have to appreciate Him and come unto Him. And so it's a really cool experience during Christmas. You're gonna love it. That was honestly one of my favorite times of the whole year. But yeah, it's gonna be great. For those who are actually going to go out to serve in this mission soon, and it's called La Gran Misión Chile Osorno, and it is literally the best mission in the whole world. Obviously, everyone says that about their mission, but this one is so special, and it's such a sweet and wonderful place. And I'm so grateful for my experience that I had there, because it's a time that I had to draw closer to the Lord, because I realized that I can't convert people unless I'm converted. And through many experiences, I came to really love and understand the Lord and understand the Spirit. And it's such a sweet experience to really understand that and know for yourself that this church is true. And during your mission, you'll have those moments as you read the Book of Mormon, as you talk with people, as you come to learn for yourself the gospel of Jesus Christ, you'll be able to feel something different. You'll be able to see things in a different perspective, in an eternal perspective, and it's absolutely wonderful. Honestly, the mission was the best 18 months for my life at that moment, and still now. I love it. I always think back to it, and it's a wonderful thing. And to me, I honestly would go again, whether it be to the same mission or somewhere else, because serving the Lord is a special calling. It's the time that you have that the Lord is trusting you with to help bring people under Christ. So take your calling seriously, and you will be blessed in so many ways. You might not be able to see it in the moment at times, but looking back, you will be able to count each and every blessing, and it is absolutely wonderful. It is honestly the most amazing experience, because I know that Heavenly Father lives. I know that He loves me and that He loves you as well. You're called to this place because you need to meet someone, you need to talk to them, help share the gospel with them, invite them to Christ. Yes, they have their own agency and that they can easily say no, because at least you're planting that seed. And if you're just planting that seed, it is enough for the Lord. Because remember, the worth of souls is great in the sight of God. Not only is it the worth of the souls of the people you teach, but yours as well. You can plant that seed in their hearts and also in your heart and let it grow. And as you let it grow, you'll see the miracles that happens all around you every single day. And it is, I honestly have no words for it except that it's a special and sweet and wonderful time in your life. Cherish it. Because as you cherish it, you will begin to change. You'll be converted. And just remember that even if you just bring one soul into Christ, whether it be yours or someone else, the Lord will be pleased with you, because you are doing His work as faithfully as you can. If you're scared at all, don't worry. There is no such thing as a perfect missionary. You just go by the Spirit. That's the best way you can do the work of the Lord. Because you might think, hey, no, I have to do this, I have to do that. Yeah, you have to do that if it's a rule base. But go by the Spirit, because the Spirit knows exactly what you need to do. Don't get caught up in comparing yourself to others. In Preach My Gospel, it says, do not compare yourself to others, as a missionary and as a person in general. But go step by step with the Lord. Follow the Spirit, and then you will see the changes. You will be able to feel the difference in your own life and in the life of others. You'll be able to see the light grow in investigators. That was always my favorite part with the less actives, or los menos activos, or investigators, because sometimes there would be no light in their eyes, but as you began to teach them and you help them come to Christ and realize who Christ was, you would be able to see them change, and you'll be able to see the light grow. That was my favorite part as a missionary, is seeing them and help them recognize this light. And you'll have many opportunities to do this. A mission is wonderful. So enjoy it, because it goes by fast. It really does. I mean, after all, time flies when you're having fun. Oh, one more thing of advice. Obviously, as missionaries, we're doing the same thing every single day. Every single day is new and different. But sometimes you feel like you're getting into a rut, as in like, I've done this every day for the past 7-8 months. What can I do differently? how can you still continue progressing spiritually? But it's really cool because when you find yourselves in those ruts and those like, what to do kind of moments, pray. Pray to Heavenly Father to help you see a different perspective of things, to help you change what you need to change so you can continue doing the work with a more positive idea, like a more positive look. And it's wonderful because He always answers prayers. And there's times when even I was just like, what am I doing? I feel like I haven't done anything. But then later, looking back on it, and those moments after praying and just trying to figure out something different, looking back, I can see that that was the time when you're always in the refiner's fire, but in those moments, that's when it was more like, hey, this is what you're changing, and this is how I'm helping you change. And so it's really cool looking back on it. So just, if you're ever in those moments, don't give up, but always move on with hope and faith.
My name is Morgan Call, and I served in the Chile Osorno Mission, and I got back about almost 3 years ago. So it's been a while, but I still remember it very well. I remember I was one of those first sister missionaries to go at the age of 19. So the announcement was very exciting. I was 19 right when it was announced, and it was very exciting. But it went by very fast. The time up leading to my mission went by so fast that I don't remember it very well, because it was just like the announcement came and I already basically had everything in order. I had a doctor's appointment the week after the announcement, and I sent in my papers 2 weeks after the announcement. So it all happened very quickly. So preparing, I don't have a lot of stories about that, but I do remember very well getting to the mission. The Chile Osorno Mission is at the bottom of the world, the very bottom, right above Antarctica. So it was a very long plane ride, and it was actually 2 different planes. No, it was 3 different planes, and I remember me and my other MTC missionary, people who were going down there, we were very excited to be trapped in an airplane with lots of different people so we could share the gospel and our first real life experience. But we talked to one of our leaders at the MTC, and they were like, oh, please don't do that, because being in an airplane is one thing, and having a friendly conversation with somebody on the airplane is one thing, but when you're in an airplane for 12 straight hours, sitting next to the same person, and you're trying to talk to them about religion, a lot of times it doesn't go very well. And we don't want to make anyone feel bad or trapped, so they tell us not to do that. And that was great advice. But even at that, we did have some really great conversations, just natural ones. And it was a huge journey. And I remember one of my friends had sent me a little note for every hour of the journey. So every hour of the journey, I'd open one up and I'd see a little note and I'd read what she told me, and it was really nice. And we got into Osorno after almost 30 hours of traveling, and it was, I was so tired. I remember we saw the mission president. We walked out of the airplane and we saw the mission president, and I don't remember anything that happened until I got to the hotel. I was so tired, and I just remember thinking I had kind of stepped back in time. Not that Chile or Osorno is by any means less than what I'm used to, but everything was just so much more rural. It was a very rural city. Even the city center was a lot smaller than I was used to, and everything was had a very old German style of housing. And so I remember thinking, oh, I definitely stepped back in time. And I was very excited to get out and explore this new country that I had been waiting to see for so long. So we did that. We got into our hotel and we were able to sleep, and I felt a lot better. And I woke up the next day and we met with our new missionary companions, our trainers, and we talked to the mission president, and we ate completos, which you'll eat a lot of completos. It's like a hot dog, but with like everything on it, like everything that you can think of, and then more than that is on top of the hot dog. And like you have avocado, tomatoes, mayo, cheese, just like everything is on top of it. And at the beginning of my mission, I couldn't like finish one completo. But by the end, I could eat like 3. And probably it'll be the same for you. So we got to know the mission president, and we went straight to work. We got with our trainers, and that day we went and we put our stuff in the house, and we were talking to people, and we were knocking doors. And we had opened, with my trainer and my other companion, we were in a trio, and we opened a sector. And it was very interesting because nobody really knew who we were. And we were just these 3 white girls walking around. And I didn't speak Spanish, and my companion didn't speak Spanish, and my trainer had only been in the mission for a couple months. So we were just walking around, just kind of trying our best. We talked to the members, and we got to know them a little bit. And I remember I understood maybe 1 or 2 words that anybody said because it was so crazy. But it was a very crazy experience, and I remember being very cold too, and it was not the last time I was cold. A little bit about Chile in general and Osorno is it is not what you would expect. I was kind of expecting this Latin American country, this typical Latin American country where it was warm and everything was very colorful, and you had Mexican food because I didn't know anything about Chile at the time, and I was like, oh, absolutely, everyone south of America eats Mexican food, absolutely. But I had these expectations, and it was not like that at all. Osorno and the south of Chile, the mission itself, Osorno Mission, is very long. It's Osorno to Punta Arenas, or Pucón a Punta Arenas, which is a better description. And so it's very, very long, and we just called it the South. And it has an interesting history, one that's fairly different from the northern part of Chile, because just, decades ago, the southern part of Chile got a lot of German settlers in because, or what I heard was because it was a similar climate, which was cold and wet. That was the climate. So they had a lot of German settlers, which is why a lot of the buildings are made out of wood, which is very different than other South American countries. A lot of the buildings are have that Alemannic style, the Germanic style, and a lot of the customs and food as well. My favorite dessert of all time from my mission was called Kuchen, which was like a cream and fruit dessert, and it was very German. And so a lot of people actually speak German as well, and I didn't pick up any German. I should have, but so it was not what I was expecting at all. It rains a lot, like more. If you're from anywhere other than Seattle, you probably have not experienced this much rain. It rained, I swear, almost 300 days out of the year. And so that was really fun and interesting, but it did make the region very beautiful. The region of the south of Chile was called Los Lagos, which is translated into the lakes, and that's what it is. It's just a beautiful land of lakes and rivers and volcanoes and just green forests and grass, and there's more green than anything you can imagine. I got back to Utah, which is where I'm from, And I just looked at everything and I was like, oh, even the green is brown here. But it's a beautiful region, and you're so blessed to go into one of the most beautiful areas in the world. And I know that for a fact. Nobody can argue me on this. Osorno Mission is the most beautiful mission in the world. Church attendance can be kind of hard. It can be really hard to get people going to church. What you always ask them is, oh, will you go to church with us this Sunday? And they'll always say, oh, si Dios quiere, which is translated to like, if God wants, like meaning like, well, we'll see, like if the wind takes me there. That's kind of that atmosphere, and we always wanted to like shake them, be like, Dios quiere, like God wants you to, I promise. But it can be kind of hard to get people to go to church. However, the people there also are just some of the kindest and most amazing people you'll see. And so even though they have their faults, sometimes I've never met anybody kinder. That's really true. So I served in 4 areas, which wasn't that much. I spent 6 months in Osorno, which was where the mission president was, or at least where his house was, and that was where like the office was. And I spent 6 months there, and it was kind of what you would expect. It's a lot like a smaller version of Provo, where you have a small city center and some suburbs, and it was smaller than Provo, or maybe it was the same size. It seems smaller because there's also no surrounding cities. It's not like you have Osorno and then like a city right next to it. You have like Osorno and then like 100 miles of like country, just like trees and fields. But it was a beautiful little place, and I absolutely loved it, and I loved the people, and I spent my summer there, my spring and summer there. It had so many plants, beautiful plants and fruit, and it all, like the roses grew wild in the streets, and there were fruit trees that we would walk by, and there would just be like a plum tree that was just in a field near our house, and we would go and we'd, get some plums for lunch or whatever. And it was beautiful and it was wonderful and I loved it. I also served in Puerto Montt, which is close to Osorno. These are in the northern parts of the mission. And I was there in the winter, and so it rained every day. If there was a day it wasn't raining, it was cloudy, and you were still glad that it wasn't raining. They gave us, or at least they gave us, I don't know if it changes, but they gave us these rain jackets, and a lot of us were like, oh no, we already brought rain jackets because it like said in the manual, but the mission president was like, oh no, you'll need them, please take them. And so we would wear like rain jackets over rain jackets, and we had this also rain skirt, which was this hideous thing, but like it didn't matter because you just didn't want to get wet and cold. And then rain boots like up to your knees. So you're just like this weird black figure with rain boots on, walking around. And we like still got catcalled. And I never understood why. Like, okay, I've never been uglier in my life, but that's fine. My mission companion would always tease, well, it's the light of Christ. They're just attracted to it. But yeah. So that was crazy, especially for sister missionaries. I would say that it's important to get rid of the vanity that you have, because there are going to be so many times when you are just sopping wet. You didn't put on makeup that day because you knew it was just going to get wiped off of your face from the rain. You haven't done your hair. You're cold. You haven't had a warm shower in a while, and you're wearing stinky, wet clothes because that's all you had and you didn't have time to dry your rain jackets. And it's times like those when you have to remember, well, I'm not here to look good. I'm not here to be pretty. I'm here to share the gospel. And people were genuinely happy to have us in their houses, even though we were just these wet little puppies walking in, these wet, gross little puppies walking into their house. There were so many people who were so glad to see us and have us in their lives, that you just, once you can let go of that vanity and realize that the most important thing is that you're sharing the gospel, it'll be a lot easier to survive those winters. I also served in Puerto Varas, which is also north. I stayed in a lot of the north area, and it is one of the most touristic places in the world, and especially in Chile. Like I mentioned before, it has a lot of German influence, and it just has this beautiful big lake with volcanoes and mountains behind it, and just these beautiful old churches, and it was absolutely stunning. But the house I lived in when I was in Puerto Varas, it was kind of a challenge to live there. And, as a sister missionary, they try to give you good houses, and it's hit or miss with any missionary. Some are really great and some are not great. And the house I lived in had rats living in the roof, and it was so humid in the house that the roof would drip. It would leak. But not because the roof was leaking from the outside, but because it was just so humid in the house, the water would condense on the ceiling and then drip down, and it would drip down these yellow and brown drops. And there was rats living in the ceiling, and we could hear them all day, and they must have been huge. They sounded huge, and we tried to see them a couple times. We stuck our heads above the ceiling to see them, and they kept me awake at night because I slept on the top bunk, which was 3 feet away from the ceiling. And I didn't sleep at all those 6 weeks, I swear. We tried everything to get rid of these rats. We tried poison. We honestly tried a cat. We honestly tried to get a stray cat to we lured him to our house, to the outside of our yard, to see if he would maybe stick around and try and catch some rats. And that didn't work. And we tried traps, and we tried so many things, and we couldn't get rid of the rats, and they were just there the whole time. But I've also had some other really, really fun houses, really cute, wonderful houses, and so, another thing that's important to remember is that the houses are a lot different. They're a lot smaller. And sometimes for me, that felt a little weird at times, but it was also really nice, especially because there is no heating in the houses or air conditioning, but you don't need air conditioning in a place that's so cold. But there was no heating, so they had wood-burning stoves. And every morning, you would get up and chop some wood and start a fire. And that was how you heated your house. So having a small house was really nice. So practice chopping wood. That's really important. You will use it. You will not only chop your own wood, but that will be a service project for the entirety of your mission. You will chop wood all day. Then I served in Villarrica, and I was only there for a little while. But it was a cute little town, and I really enjoyed it. Very similar to the other ones I have seen. I have not served in the southern part. I did not serve in the southern part. But as far as weather goes, the southern parts are also rainy, but they're windier as well. In the city, it's a city called Punta Arenas, and it has ropes on the sidewalk, a rail of ropes on the sidewalk, because it gets so windy that sometimes you just gotta grab on and your feet will just fly in the air, and they don't want you flying all the way away, so you just gotta hold on to the ropes. But even the entire mission is very crazy weather, and you'll be surprised that sometimes you'll get there and be I feel like we should go inside, and you call your supervisor or your AP or whatever, and they're nope, this is pretty normal, and you're this can't be normal. But it is crazy, so be prepared. I loved learning about the Chilean culture. Even as an outsider, even as somebody who came from so far away, who was, in a lot of ways very different from them, I felt so accepted. I felt like everybody was kind. I mean, not everyone, that's not right, but most everyone was very kind. And everyone I met, at least gave me a hello if I gave them one, which is, it was great. The culture is a lot different from the United States in the United States, we have a culture of go, 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 go. I'm going to eat lunch at my desk because I don't have any time. I have to do my homework. I have to be at work. And I have to do these millions of things. And I'm going to work until 8 p.m. And, and it's very go, go, go and crazy. But the Chilean culture is a lot more relaxed. Usually people wake up later. They take almuerzo, which is lunch, but it's a big meal. And usually they get like an hour or two off of work, so they can go home and spend that time with their family, take a nap, and then they go back to work and everything closes, not too late. Nothing's open past like 9 p.m., It's very calm. And I think that happens when you're in a more rural place. People were, and this obviously depended on the person, but people were very generous. Everybody was willing to give you food. Everyone was willing to let you at least stand by their fire for a little bit if you were cold. The members especially love you to death, especially if you serve them and you love them and you help them. And if you're an obedient missionary, the members love you. And your mamita, the person who serves you lunch every day, they will become like your mom, like your mission mom. And so Chile is a great place. I think something important to remember about going to a different country is that it's different. And that sounds kind of silly because it sounds like, well, obviously. But we do have to remember that the people in a different country have grown up with different ideals. They've grown up with a different history and with different priorities. And to be careful about the things that you say. And you'll hear a lot of things that are like, oh, ouch, I'm not like that. Like, you'll hear a lot of people be like, oh, well, all Americans are fat, or all Americans are rich and greedy. And you'll hear things like that and it'll hurt you. And just, be careful about the things you say as well. Chile as a country has a very different history than the United States. They've gone through a couple of hard things, trying to figure out who they are. And so sometimes you'll get people who are angry at you because you're an American. And that happens only every once in a while. It's not a lot, but every once in a while you will get that. And, you want to maybe be defensive, but you just have to remember that they grew up with different ideals and they grew up with different history lessons. The interesting thing about Chile, though, is its mix of cultures, because you have a lot of people that are from white descent, like German or Spanish, and they're very light-skinned. And then you have a lot of people from an indigenous descent as well. And sometimes there's like a clash between the two, but genuinely loved everyone I met. There was honestly nothing that there was no stereotype about those groups that I found to be true. But sometimes you'll hear them complain about each other. So the indigenous group of Chileans, they speak a language called Mapuche, and if you find someone who speaks it, it's a really cool language. And they lived in the country for a long time before people came and took over, and before the Germans came. And so sometimes you'll find somebody who knows a lot about the history, and it's so interesting. I knew somebody who knew a lot about Easter Island, who actually was a descendant of the tribe that lived on Easter Island and who started it. And so we asked her all sorts of interesting questions, and it was so fascinating. And learning about that culture on my mission and as I got back was so interesting. There's an urban legend that takes place on the island of Chiloé. And in Chiloé, they say it rains from the floor, like it rains from the ground, because it's so windy and so rainy, it feels like the rain is just like coming from below and coming up towards you. But it's an urban legend about an old ghost ship that will come to harbor, and it's bad luck to see it. And you'll hear some people talk about it sometimes or joke about it, like, oh, where did that person go? Oh, they got taken by the ghost ship. And it's very interesting. So you do see some different cultures. So to say Chilean culture is kind of weird because there are very different subsets of it. One of my favorite things to study when I got back from my mission, and one thing that you don't have the ability to study on your mission, but is still beautiful, is the literature of Chile. You have wonderful artists who paint beautiful pictures and just beautiful and wonderful. You have Pablo Neruda, you have Isabella Allende, you have so many artists who come from Chile who just have done beautiful things with words and with picture. So the food can be, or at least for me, it was hit or miss. I loved the experience of food. I loved sitting down to dinner. It was not common for people to watch TV and eat food or be on their phones and eat food. I loved the tradition of sitting down and spending a long time on dinner. They give you, or lunch or breakfast, they give you an hour for lunch, and sometimes that wasn't enough time because you're just sitting and talking with this family. And you know, a lot of people, that's just, you know, they'll take it slow and they'll eat lunch and they'll spend that time with their families and enjoying the food. And there is a meal called once at night that takes place at like 9 or 10, and it's a meal revolved around bread. And the bread is by far the most delicious and the most dangerous thing to eat because you get addicted very quickly. It's so good. But it revolves around bread, and so they just have bread that they've cooked, and you put jam on it, and you put like avocado on it, or you put butter on it, or you put meat and cheese on it, and that's just what you do for an hour, and you just eat bread with different things, and you take, a lot of people take coffee, but obviously not you. You'll take tea, some herbal tea, or hot chocolate, or something like that. And oh, it was the best when we got invited in for once, and we like had a little lesson with an investigator, and we ate once and had hot chocolate on really cold nights. That was amazing. It was so good. The craziest food that I've ever heard of was, and it's not something that I've ever seen anybody do, but this was what was common for a long time and is still common probably in the outer country parts in farmlands, is people would, if they were preparing to slaughter an animal like a sheep or a cow, they would drink the blood of that animal with like cilantro and lime juice, and they would just go and like, they would cut the throat of that animal and put the glass up to it, and they would drink that blood. And I've never like had any desire to do that. But it was very common just 20 years ago, and it's still common in very rural parts. But overall, the food, there's a lot of it. There's some really good food. There's a lot of it, and I gained so much weight on my mission, and a lot of people were like, but how, you're walking around all the time? Okay, but we're walking around all the time, but we also just are getting offered food all the time, and there's just always like French fries. The street vendors like selling French fries, and they're like not that much, and you're like, oh, I want some French fries. And there's always soda, and nobody drinks water. They all drink like juice or soda. And so when you ask them for water, they're like, we don't have water. Like, which is weird because the southern part of Chile actually has the most delicious water ever. So it was interesting. I gained a lot of weight, and I had to kind of forget my vanity. I had to drop it and be like, okay, well, doesn't matter if I, gained a lot of weight. As long as I'm healthy, as long as I can do the Lord's work, it's going to be okay. I was very lucky to learn Spanish. Spanish as a language is a beautiful language. It's similar enough to English that it wasn't too difficult to learn, but it was different enough that it was a whole new experience, and it really opened up my mind. As far as the Chilean dialect goes, you'll hear a lot of people tell you that it's like hearing people speak Chinese, because Chileans speak very fast. They drop the ends of their words. They have a lot of slang. And you do also have to be careful coming back from your mission, because a lot of the words that Chileans say that don't mean anything bad to them are bad words to other people. But the dialect is very interesting. You'll pick up a lot of those idioms. You'll pick up a lot of the fun stuff that they say. One of my favorite things that Chileans do sometimes, mostly older generations, but you'd still hear it sometimes, is they would talk so fast and they would want to just talk to you forever that when they ran out of breath, they would start talking like this, and they would breathe in and they would just keep talking as they were breathing in, and I just wanted to be like, whoa, whoa, you can take a breath, it's okay. But it was very endearing. It was very cute. You learn a lot of fun things in Chile, and when you get back from that mission, you come back and you're like, oh, I don't understand any of the jokes here because everyone speaks so differently. But it's very fun to learn a different language and to learn how language works. That was what made me choose to continue studying Spanish and to eventually get a master's in Spanish literature. I think as far as a tip to stay safe is to just be careful about the dogs. That's weird to say, but in the south of Chile, and I think in a lot of South American countries, there's a lot of dogs, just wild, stray dogs everywhere. One time, me and my companion were followed by a pack of like 8 dogs all day, just all day followed by the same dogs. And some of them are very vicious and others are not. So being careful about that is very important. I did get bit once by a dog, and I felt his teeth touch me and I felt him pierce me. But when I went and I looked at the bite, it was underneath my garments and I couldn't see it. It didn't pierce the skin. And I was like, oh, those garments, right? They protected me. But seriously, though, you do have to be very careful about the dogs. Those were my fear. They were not always very kind, and they were everywhere. Another important thing to know is about the fleas. The fleas are very common down in Chile, and they're awful. You get a lot of them. You get a lot of bites, and they itch terribly. There are different tricks. You can ask around for different tricks how to get rid of them, but sometimes you just have to accept it. When I got fleas, I didn't have time to clean the entire house and wash everything. And so I just kind of I took garlic pills and I just hoped that they went away. But there's usually something that you can do. But do be careful because those are a huge problem. I remember one time we were walking and it was night and it was raining, like it did every day. It was raining. And I was with one of my companions and we were kind of on a more rural road. It was a dirt road and it was leading to a couple of houses that were just scattered on top of a hill. And so we weren't really close to any of the city. We were kind of close to the suburbs, but still, we were walking on this road and it was dark and I had a little flashlight, but still, it was raining and it was crazy. And so there was a turn in the road and we were on the side of the road. We weren't in the middle. We were on the side of this dirt road and I was on the inside and my companion was on the outside. And all of a sudden this car came speeding down and I jumped out of the way because it was going to hit us. And I jumped out of the way and my companion didn't have as much time to jump. So she jumped after I jumped. And all of a sudden she's wailing and crying and screaming. And I'm trying to ask her what's wrong, but I don't have a lot of Spanish. This is only my this is my like second month in the mission, and she doesn't speak any English, and I don't speak a ton of Spanish, and I'm trying to ask her if she's okay. And she eventually told me that the car hit her. And I was like, oh my gosh, where? And so I called the elders, and they didn't speak any English, and I didn't speak any Spanish, and I was trying to communicate that my companion was hit by a car. And I was on the phone like, so remember Sister Montalban? Yeah, okay, you remember her. So we were walking, and all of a sudden there was this car, and I couldn't think of the word. I couldn't think of how to say it. And they were just like guessing, like, did it hit her? And eventually they guessed it, and I was like, yes. And they were like, well, take her to the hospital. And so we called the mission president, and by that time she was like calmed down, and she's like, well, only hit me a little bit, and I think I'm going to be okay. I don't want to go to the hospital. I just want to go home. I just want to lay down. I'm like really exhausted. And so I like carried her home like on my back a little bit. And we like were walking home, and I was like trying to keep her distracted, and I was making her teach me these Spanish like children's songs, and I still remember them. I do. And so I was trying to keep her distracted, and we got home, and she was resting, and it turns out it did hit her ankle, like it hit her leg, but it didn't hit her hard enough to do any real damage, and she was okay. But it was crazy, and she told that story the rest of her mission, and it was the biggest thing. The next day, I think, was like actually zone conference, and we didn't go, and she was like telling everybody like, well, I got hit by a car, and it was great. It was crazy. One of my favorite memories on my mission was the Christmas that I was in the mission field, and my companion and I were just being nerds about Christmas. We started listening to Christmas songs, like Glee Christmas songs, or like covers of Christmas songs, because it was like the only actual music we could justify listening to. And I was like, I remember that Weezer did a Christmas album a while ago, so I like downloaded the Weezer Christmas album, and my companion who didn't speak English was like, "Are these Christmas songs?" I was like, "Yes, they are." But we were so excited. It was so strange though, because I'm used to snow and cold and mittens and sweaters, but Christmas in Osorno was hot. It was very hot. Or it was hot to us, because it had been cold all year. But it was warm, and it was sunny, and it was so strange because we would see like decorations of snowmen in the window with their scarves and hats on, and my companion would always say, "Oh, they're gonna melt in there," and but it was so fun. On Christmas night, we had dinner with several different people. I remember we had dinner with the non-member husband of one of the people that I got to know and love the most. And he had an alcohol problem, which was why he couldn't be a member. He had a very serious disease. And he was usually drunk when he met with the elders. It was in their section. And I remember we just stopped by because I had gotten a new companion, and we wanted to say hi to the wife, and she had us in, and we started talking, and he said he felt so amazing with us that he, wanted to continue learning about the gospel. And so every time that we came over, he wouldn't drink that day, and it was a miracle. And so that Christmas, we went over, and he wasn't drunk, and he was laughing with us, and he was playing with us. I had a ukulele that I had bought on the mission, and we sang Christmas songs with the ukulele, and he was learning how to play the ukulele, and he was just, the spirit was so strong because he could see that this is what a family should be like. It should have the spirit, and it should be happy like this. And we ate dinner with them, and it was wonderful. And I had the very distinct impression that Christ was born for him. Christ was born so that that man could have a family and hopefully keep them forever. So that man could have a body and overcome temptations. And I had that impression, and it was beautiful and wonderful. And even though it was hot outside, even though I missed my family, that might have been my favorite Christmas. I definitely have a lot of gratitude for my mission. I genuinely owe so much to my mission. And I don't mean that in an abstract way. I mean that if I hadn't gone on my mission, I wouldn't have learned Spanish. If I didn't learn Spanish, I wouldn't be getting my master's right now. I wouldn't be on the career path that I know I need to be on. If I didn't learn Spanish, I wouldn't have met my wonderful husband in a Spanish class. And if I hadn't have gone on my mission, I wouldn't have learned as quickly how to plan and how to be diligent and how to deal with hard times and how to be close to the Savior. And I really owe so much to it. And so when I say that I would not be here, I mean that I don't know where I would be, but it would not be anything close to this happy or wonderful. And it was so hard. It was harder than you can imagine. And at times it was harder than anything I thought I was prepared for. It was the hardest thing I've had to do, but it was still absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it.